Oh boy, I can't wait for another fun game of Factorio. Wait, this doesn't seem right. Welcome, dear viewers. Today we'll be doing something a little different. I'll be setting out on a journey to completely master each of Factorio's Space Age's planets by stranding myself there with nothing. Just whatever the game is gracious enough to give me at the start of a normal run on Novice. And as you might have noticed, today we've crash landed on planet Vulcanus. This is possible thanks to the very cool mod Any Planet Start, and I think the name speaks for itself. It allows you to choose your starting planet, and also tweaks the research tree to make it actually possible to complete the planet starting from zero. The goals I'll be aiming for to consider a planet complete are as follows. Build a fully automated base producing at least 90 SPM of each science available on said planet, including a space platform for space science, and build a self-sufficient ship capable of traveling between planets. But anyway, that's enough exposition. Let's talk about what I've gotten myself into. Unlike the usual starting planet, Novice, Vulcanus poses a few unique challenges. For example, there are 0 conventional ore patches except for coal. So the only way to get iron, copper, and stone in the early game is by mining rocks. Oh, so many rocks. The trees are also too charred to give any usable wood. Instead, all we get is carbon, and its only use right now is as burnable fuel for our furnaces. And here you can see the tech tree changes. For example, we unlock steel just by smelting iron plates. I would have loved to be able to do this challenge with the fully vanilla tech tree, but sadly as it stands right now, it's not possible. Mostly due to there being literally no way to obtain the electricity needed to get research going. And even ignoring that, the introduction of milestone technologies makes it straight up impossible to fully complete any of the planets if you don't start on Novice. But if you ignore all of that, and the lack of automatable mining, this almost feels like a normal burner phase. The only way to kickstart power on Vulcanus is by using solar panels, which are now unlocked by a milestone technology. And of course, since there's no wood here, for now I'm stuck with just the 2 wooden power poles I get from the single starting piece of wood. But thankfully, that's enough to get some early red science going. And while that chugs along, I'll go hit some more rocks, because who doesn't love a bit of manual labor in their automation game? The next thing to do is mine some calcite and start using the sulfuric acid geysers to produce massive amounts of steam. I'll use this steam to produce power later, but first I need to research it. So I add an extra lab to make said research slightly less glacial. And then I get distracted making concrete and lubricant of the measly power output of a single solar panel. That's because, to start any sort of meaningful base on Vulcanus, I'll need a way to free myself from being the sole resource provider. And to do that, I'll need the foundry. The foundry can produce infinite amounts of iron, copper, and stone from nothing but the lava here on Vulcanus. And you see that appendage of pipes growing out from my foundry? I'll be using it to store the molten metal so I can then feed it back into the same foundry since I can only afford one right now. All I need to do is flip the input around and now we have access to any metal related product, from pipes to gears to iron and steel plates. And since the foundry has a 50% productivity bonus on any recipe, I'll be using a foundry to craft more foundries. That's buy 2, get 1 free right there. Now with a non-pitiful amount of iron at my disposal, I can finally make steam engines, giving us access to a much better and more reliable power source. And with that power, I can afford to run an entire second foundry, now making molten copper. But this setup is very bad and very annoying, since I need to manually change recipes all the time. So instead, let's add some extra steam engines and bootstrap together some concrete production, since it's needed to make more foundries. And then finally get a separate foundry for each resource. I never thought that automated basic plates and gears would bring me such relief, but here we are. And now that I have foundries constantly working, I need to deal with all the stone they spit out. And what's a better way to deal with your problems than to just chug them into an incinerator? Next up, I want to get something resembling a main bus going. So of course, the first order of business is green circuits. And then setting up an early mall, since I'm tired of handcrafting all my supplies. And also science. I can't even make green science yet since I haven't researched it. Thankfully, that problem is easily solved. Red and green science are both very cheap, which is great because my production currently is absolutely abysmal. And with how power hungry foundries are, I need to expand the steam engines every time I want a few extra plates per second. Next, we add steel, then some more labs, and then extend the mall with the last couple of items we'll need in mass quantities. And of course more steam engines. Finally, it's time to set up some automated mining for both coal and calcite. Up until now I've just been running around carrying calcite from chest to chest. Calcite is needed both for the steam production, which powers our entire base, and also for the foundries to produce any amount of molten metal. The goal right now is to do research and stockpile enough resources to rebuild into something more permanent. And since there's no crude oil on Vulcanus, we need to use coal liquefaction to get any oil products. But not even the good coal liquefaction, no. We need to use this inefficient simple liquefaction recipe. And while looking around for a tungsten ore patch, I had a little run-in with the local demolisher. This guy is gonna cause me a lot of headaches later on. Since I'll be rebuilding, I don't want to be using yellow belts for more than a second longer than is necessary. So here's some red belt automation. Now let's get back to those oil products. There's obviously no water on Vulcanus, so I need to condense steam back into water so I can crack the heavy oil down to light oil and petroleum. I'll also need a ton more foundries, what with them being the only way to produce resources on this planet and all. So I set up some quick carbon production feeding right into an assembler making tungsten carbide. Now it's time to tear down our base to make room for something bigger and better. First up is of course the lava processing. Lava and calcite in, molten metal and stone out. 4 of both molten iron and copper should be a good start. And then I run out of tungsten again, so guess what? It's back to playing Minecraft. Hey there, Mr. Demolisher. How is your day? My arms hurt from hitting rocks. Oh no, I misclicked, wait, I didn't mean it, Anyway, at least I managed to grab a bunch of tungsten, which will allow me to craft at least several more foundries. Hooray! Also, it turns out that one foundry is almost perfectly ratioed to produce enough copper wire to feed 3 green circuit assemblers. So I can set up my circuit production like so. Now drag the circuits down with the rest of the belts, and split off the stone byproducts from the foundries and bring it down as well. And just like that, we have a functional main bus. Next, we need to take care of the oil products. So here's plastic and sulfur. With just the crappy simple liquefaction recipe, we won't be getting enough petroleum to keep these running at max consumption. But that's a problem for later me. The only things missing now are coal and stone bricks, but thankfully those are pretty easy to acquire. And so we have pretty much every resource we would need to build a real base, just like on Novice. But resources alone don't make a base. So let's start putting them to use. Just this single foundry with no modules or anything is enough to feed 24 assemblers making red circuits. And they're so easy to set up that the hardest part about using foundries is getting enough inserters to empty them as quickly as they produce. And the first thing I'll use the red circuits for is to make some efficiency modules, since this base is extremely power hungry and I don't want to end up covering half of my safe area with steam engines. Oh, guess what? I'm out of tungsten again. I'm really gonna need to finally solve this problem. And foundries aren't only used for making intermediates, they can also make belts very quickly and efficiently. Not that efficient on my power grid though. Next up, engines. And once again, why not use a single foundry to make enough pipes to feed a mega base worth of engine production? Now that I have all of that, it's time to rebuild science. But now on top of red and green science, we're also gonna need a decent amount of military science, since that big worm won't just leave if I ask nicely. And of course, enough ammo production to solve any problem I might encounter, very peacefully. And here's the labs. Probably overbuilt, but hey, I had a bunch of them sitting in storage, so why not? I've also already made all the ingredients for blue science, so all that's missing is the assemblers. And just like that, we now have science chugging along in the background while I go off to build some more. I want robots, so here's electric engines and batteries. Both of these are used so infrequently that you can just put them on the same belt. With that, we now have all the ingredients for robots. So of course I build those instantly. And why would I bother keeping my base organized when I can just produce gun turrets right in the middle of my bus? Wouldn't you know it, I'm simultaneously running into a power crisis, petroleum shortage, and steel shortage. So I do the only reasonable thing in that situation and make blue circuits. Why am I like this? Well, since I have blue circuits, I might as well make power armor. And I might as well slap some quality modules in there for the 2% chance of getting a better one. And shockingly, the 2% chance didn't pay off. At least now I have personal robots to take the burden off of my poor rock-hitting hands. And it's time to make some big mining drills finally. We'll need them to get tungsten. Speaking of getting tungsten, let's stock up on ammo and turrets and go worm hunting. While demolishers are hard to kill, with enough red ammo gun turrets you can outdamage their regeneration. And while waiting for the big worm to show up, I might as well set up the tungsten mining. Okay, this guy is taking a bit too long to show up, so let's deliver him a personal invitation. Pulling demolishers by yourself can be a bit scary, but I've played enough World of Warcraft to know that when fire appears under my feet, that means move out of the way. And of course, I'm gonna throw some poison capsules to help our gun turrets. Just like that, we've liberated this land from the evil demolisher and secured our tungsten patch. That means I'm finally free of hitting rocks. Hooray! Now to refine the tungsten, there's two things we need. First, tungsten steel plates, which are just tungsten mixed with molten iron, and tungsten carbide, which is tungsten mixed with carbon. Plug those into the bus, and just like that we have every resource we need. So let's start researching the rocket silo. And while we wait for that research to finish, let's set up the metallurgic science pack. It's just molten copper combined with both tungsten products, so the real hard part is killing the demolisher and getting a consistent source of tungsten. Also, I got bored while waiting, so I set up space platform foundations before I even had them unlocked. But a rocket is no good without ingredients to build it, so I set up LDS using the special foundry recipe, and also rocket fuel using just the boring old recipe. Here's our first rocket, and off it goes to create our first space platform. Here's the design I'll be using for it. It is grossly overkill for our purposes, but it was designed for a very different kind of playthrough, and at least I won't have to worry about reaching that 90 SPM mark for space science. But our base is basically running on fumes right now in terms of oil. I'm getting maybe like 3 plastic bars per second. I'll have to fix that eventually, but for now I'll just ignore it since I have more important things to do. Like cliff explosives, so I can rescue my base from the mess of cliffs that is this planet. And here's the solution to that oil problem: proper coal liquefaction. It's slightly complicated to set up, since it requires routing the heavy oil back into the input, steam, and a ton of cracking. But the increased production is definitely worth it. So let's take down that old oil setup and plug in the coal into the new and upgraded version. Change the coal mining to big mining drills so the patch lasts longer, and all of that just in time to catch the last rocket launch that will complete our space platform. And here's the space science going into the labs. Now the only thing that's missing from this base are yellow and purple science. But sadly, I think we've pretty much hit the limit of what we can produce here. So let's prepare for the final base redesign, and also take out another demolisher to open up some more space and resources. The thing I was mostly interested in is this sulfuric acid patch, since I'm gonna use it to make a massive steam power plant. And when I say massive, I mean massive. The easiest way to deconstruct a huge amount of buildings at once is to make a deconstruction planner that blacklists roboports and power poles, and just have the robots do everything while you go off and do something else. But this will take forever, so with the magic of video editing, I'll just do this. First off, lava processing. This design is fully tileable and has room for beacons in case you need more production. Calcite goes in from the sides and stone comes out of the middle. Any excess gets sent straight into lava using a priority output splitter. Next, we need a good casting setup. I'll use the assembling machines as beacon placeholders since they have the same dimensions. And now I can just copy and paste this design over and over for all the other castable items. I'll put copper plates here to the side since they won't be used as much anyway. Next, green circuits. One foundry to 3 circuit assemblers just like before, except way bigger. Then rebuild oil cracking. And I still can't get over how much nicer the designs can be now that you can flip fluid inputs. Plastic and sulfur, normal electric furnaces for stone bricks, and finally let's turn the base on. Now I could slowly talk about all the things that I've already built in this video, or I could do this instead. There we go. Now we have everything we had in the old base, but bigger and better. Now let's finally get to the new things, like yellow and purple science. And yes, I have used this purple science design in every single video so far, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yellow science is just a matter of plugging in the resources we already have. And purple science might need modules and electric furnaces, but in such small amounts that you can just build them wherever and have logistics bots take care of it. I've also implemented sushi science again, since at this point it's probably the simplest way of getting all the sciences into labs. But having this base fully working is once again killing my oil production, so I need to go off, grab another patch of coal, and then triple my coal liquefaction to hopefully have it keep up. I don't actually need them to complete my self-imposed goals, but what kind of base doesn't have at least tier 2 module production? Definitely not any base I'd ever build. And I once again ran into power problems. Foundries are extremely power hungry and I'm using tons of them. So I hook up another sulfuric acid field, which I'll turn into another power plant later. But now I need to rebuild the tungsten steel and tungsten carbide I'll need for Vulcanus' unique science pack. Next up, rockets. I would say 4 rockets is a good benchmark to aim for. And then I tried gambling for higher quality Mark II power armor for some reason. Imagine how much I could get done if I didn't get distracted by stuff like this every 5 minutes. At least I can run very fast now. Then I figured, what kind of Vulcanus base doesn't produce green belts? So I made green belts, and made the power plant even more ridiculous to keep up with the amount of foundries I now have working. Now that the base is up to the arbitrary standards I made up, let's start working on the spaceship. Here's the blueprint. Once again, ridiculously overkill, but we're going for it. This is a cargo ship intended to quickly transport massive amounts of resources between planets. So it covers my second criteria of having a working interplanetary ship. So now I have some time to kill while that builds, so let's go kill some more demolishers. And patch up some bottlenecks that are still slowing the base down. Even with 4 rockets, a ship like this still takes a long time to build, but eventually it gets built. So let's go up there and give it a test ride, just to make sure it can actually fly. Maintaining a speed of around 200 km per second, no asteroid even gets close to colliding with the ship. So after getting to planet Fulgora with 0 damage taken, I'll consider my second goal achieved. And with that, we've completed planet Vulcanus starting with nothing. We went from hours of smashing rocks by hand for a measly amount of resources to interplanetary travel. So for now, that'll be all from me, dear viewers. Until next time, see ya!